Hey, you. You're finally awake.
The Nintendo DS wasn't exactly known for cutting-edge visuals, but every so often a game would come out that pushed the dual-screen handheld to its absolute limits. Despite hardware constraints, some developers managed to create titles that were not just artistically impressive, but technically groundbreaking for the system. Today we're taking a deep dive into 7 graphically stunning Nintendo DS games, and these are titles that defy the odds and stood out for their visuals, design and innovation. From cel-shaded masterpieces to 3D remakes and stylish RPGs, these games prove the DS could do so much more than pixel art and sprites. As always, this is just 7 examples that I'm giving, but if you think there are ones I should be talking about, please put them in the comments below and we can always do a part 2 and a part 3. Before we get into the list, if you think I deserve it, please hit that like and subscribe button, it really helps the channel grow. We also have a weekly podcast, where this week we're talking about Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo. And we also have a $1 a month Patreon, where you can get involved with the Smut Squad, submit your questions, and get your own show called DLC. Right, let's get into it, shall we? 7 graphically stunning games for the Nintendo DS. Super Mario 64 DS. Now, Super Mario 4 64 DS wasn't just a port of the beloved Nintendo 64 classic, it was a graphical showcase of what the Nintendo DS could accomplish at launch. Released in 2004 as a launch title, the game was an ambitious attempt to recreate and enhance one of gaming's most influential 3D platformers on handheld hardware that was far weaker than the N64. The DS's hardware limitations made this an incredibly bold undertaking, yet the results were nothing short of astonishing. Visually, Super Mario 64 DS managed to translate a fully 3D world onto a device that had never hosted such an expansive, polygonal game before. While some textures were simplified and draw distances slightly reduced, the game compensated with enhanced character models, new environments and smoother animations. Mario, Luigi, Wario and Yoshi all had uniquely rendered designs that were surprisingly detailed for the DS screen. The gameplay remained faithful to the original with a few additions. Players could switch between 4 characters, each with different abilities, adding depth and variety to exploration. While the D-pad only control scheme did take some getting used to in a 3D space, the touchscreen offered a workaround, though it wasn't ideal for everyone. An important element of its legacy is just how it introduced a new generation of gamers to a classic through a modern lens. It wasn't just nostalgic fanservice, it added content, new stars, minigames and even multiplayer. Critically, the game received praise for its visuals, especially considering it was a launch title. Many reviewers highlighted the draw distance, lighting, and character animations as standouts. It ran smoothly on the DS and often felt like a full console game in your pocket. The technical feat of porting such a large 3D world was not lost on fans or developers. It became a benchmark for what the DS could do when pushed to its limits, and that was early on, right at the start. Some even consider it one of the most impressive launch titles in handheld history, to be fair, I would. Interesting tidbits included the added multiplayer mode, which uses the DS wireless capabilities for the first time, and the touchscreen minigames that added replayability and showcased the DS hardware. Super Mario 64's DS long-standing legacy is not only just nostalgic value, but its role as a proof of concept. It told developers that 3D on the DS was possible and opened the doors for future graphically intensive titles. Even today, it remains a favourite among speedrunners, modders and collectors. Its impact on the DS's reputation as a platform capable of more than just simple 2D games cannot be overstated. The World Ends With You. I love this game so much. When Square Enix released The World Ends With You in 2007, they delivered a game that didn't just look stylish, it oozed personality. Designed by the same creative minds behind Kingdom Hearts, this action RPG game features bold character designs, a vibrant urban aesthetic, and a unique dual-screen battle system that fully utilised the DS's capabilities. Set in the bustling Shibuya district of Tokyo, the game featured an exaggerated graffiti-inspired art style that immediately stood out. Characters had thick outlines, angular designs, and expressive animations. Environments were brimming with life, billboards, neon signage, and a mixture of 2D and pseudo-3D effects that made each district feel alive. The graphical style wasn't just for show, it was central to the game's identity. Every menu, icon, and transition was stylishly animated. The DS's resolution and hardware were limited, but The World Ends With You disguises constraints with a distinct and cohesive aesthetic. The blend of fashion, music, and urban culture was unlike anything seen on the system. Gameplay-wise, it was revolutionary. Players controlled 2 characters simultaneously, one on each screen, using both the buttons and the touchscreen. It was a bit chaotic, but it was kind of rewarding, and the splashiest special effects during combat were a visual spectacle of particle effects, slashes, and animated attacks. Story-wise, it followed Neku, a loner who finds himself caught in a Deadly Reapers game, which I lost my mind. I love death game animes and series, so I was like, how the hell did I not play this sooner? The narrative was mature, emotional, and deeply philosophical, touching on themes of self-identity, social connection, and death. For a DS game, this level of narrative depth paired with such expressive visuals was rare. Reception was overwhelmingly positive. Critics hailed it as one of the most innovative and best looking RPGs on the DS. Many cited its art direction, fluid animations and ambitious UI design as some of the best on the handheld. Interestingly, The World Ends With You also had a legacy beyond the DS. It was later remastered for mobile on the Nintendo Switch and even received an anime adaptation. These later versions maintained the visual style that made the original so beloved. One of the game's defining legacy is how it showed that style could triumph over raw polygon count. Rather than emulate console graphics, it created something uniquely handheld that looked beautiful on its own terms. To this day, The World Ends With You is cited as a cult classic. Its visuals remain some of the most distinctive ever seen on the DS, and a testament to how great art direction can transcend hardware limitations. The Legend of Zelda: Phantom Hourglass. When the Phantom Hourglass arrived on Nintendo DS in 2007, it marked a major milestone for the franchise. Not only was its first Zelda game developed specifically for the DS, but it also was an attempt to carry on the cel-shaded look of the Wind Waker onto much less powerful hardware. Surprisingly, Nintendo succeeded in crafting a 3D action adventure that looked phenomenal for the system. The game used a fully 3D engine that allowed for dynamic environments, moving characters, and real-time battles, all rendered in cartoonish expressive style. The camera used an isometric top-down angle that showed off Link's animations, environmental detail, and enemy behaviour. Dungeons were designed with layers of verticality, and the visual clarity helped players distinguish between puzzle elements. Story-wise, the game picks up after the Wind Waker, with Link and Tetra exploring new seas and encountering the Ghost Ship. When Tetra is taken, Link is thrown into a quest to rescue her. Aided by the Spirit Celia and the hilarious and roguish Lineback, the story, while lighter in tone, was full of heart, humour and mystery. One of the game's most innovative uses of the DS hardware was its touch controls. Players controlled Link entirely with a stylus, including movements, sword swings and puzzle interaction. Visually, this allowed for smooth, uninterrupted action and animation, the way that players drew paths for boomerangs or charted sea routes and also had visual flair. Another graphical highlight was the ocean segments. While sailing was a simplified version of the Wind Waker systems, the water effects, enemy encounters and dynamic environments made it feel alive. The game also made great use of light and shadow to bring dungeons and ruins to life. In terms of reception, Phantom Hourglass was met with critical acclaim. While the touch controls were divisive, the graphics were nearly universally praised. For many, it was one of the best looking DS games of its time, showing off what Nintendo's internal team could do when optimizing for their own hardware. The game also included clever use of both screens. Boss fights would span the top and bottom screens for larger-than-life encounters, and puzzles would often require players to flip the DS shut or blow into the microphone, adding interactivity to its visuals. Although doing it on the train is a pain in the arse when you've got to shout into it, you look like an absolute idiot. It's worth noting that Phantom Hourglass ran incredibly smoothly, with very few frame rate issues. The animations were crisp and the characters were expressive even with limited polygons, proving that Nintendo artists knew how to make the most of minimal resources. The game's legacy remained strong. It was followed by Spirit Tracks, which used the same engine and graphical approach. Together they represent a unique chapter in Zelda's visual history, one that brought the magic of the Wind Waker to the palms of the player's hands. To this day, Phantom Hourglass stands as a triumph of optimization and style. It was proof that the DS could deliver grand adventures without sacrificing graphical charm. Dragon Quest IX: Sentinels of the Starry Skies. When Dragon Quest IX: Sentinels of the Starry Skies was released in 2009, it became one of the most technically ambitious RPGs ever seen on Nintendo DS. Developed by Level 5 and published by Square Enix, this installment was the first mainline Dragon Quest game to debut on a handheld, and it didn't skimp on visual presentation. Featuring fully 3D environments and characters, Dragon Quest IX brought a traditional turn-based RPG into a dynamic, richly animated world. Graphically, Dragon Quest IX was impressive for a number of reasons. First, it featured an expansive overworld environment filled with rolling hills, villages, forests and oceans, all rendered in vibrant 3D. Towns and dungeons were detailed with layers of animation, from flickering lanterns to flowing rivers. The game's cel-shaded character models were clean and expressive, and monster designs retained from the late great Akira Toriyama's iconic charm despite the resolution of the DS. The game's story follows a Celestian, an angelic guardian of the mortal world, who loses their wings and powers after a world-shaking event. The player is cast down into the world of mortals, setting off on a journey that explores the themes of divinity, sacrifice, and redemption. The story is layered and emotional, with numerous side quests that add surprising depth. Dragon Quest IX's customization system also stood out visually. Players could create their own characters and outfit them with gear that appeared in-game. Every helmet, sword, and piece of armor changed the character's model. On a system like the DS, this level of visual customization was extremely rare and made each player's party feel unique and personal. The combat was traditional turn-based, but battles occurred in full 3D with the beautiful attack animations, especially for spells and abilities. Even though encounters weren't as flashy as some action RPGs, they were smooth and visually satisfying. The enemy designs were detailed and colourful, capturing the quirky and endearing style the series is known for. A big technical feat was how the game handled multiplayer. Players could connect locally to explore dungeons together with all characters visible in real time. This added a new dimension to the visuals, as having multiple custom characters on screen maintained performance while looking cohesive. Critically, Dragon Quest IX received strong praise for its scope and presentation. Reviewers noted that it looked like a late-era PS1 or early PS2 game, which on DS hardware was astonishing. The sense of scale, from large towns to epic bosses, made it feel like a full console RPG shrunk down to handheld side. Interesting touches included the dynamic day-night cycle and weather effects which altered lighting and ambience. Combined with a sweeping orchestral soundtrack and crisp UI design, the game created an immersive and believable fantasy world. The legacy of Dragon Quest IX is one of bold ambition. It sold over 5 billion copies worldwide and was a gateway RPG for many DS owners. Its visuals, customization and rich world proved that DS was capable of delivering not just good RPGs, but great looking ones. To this day, fans hope for a remake or a remaster, but the original remains a visual marvel. Dragon Quest IX stands as one of the best looking DS games and a landmark RPG experience. Dementium: The Ward. Released in 2007 by Renegade Kid, Dementium: The Ward is one of the most visually surprising titles on the Nintendo DS. A first-person survival horror game, it took full advantage of the DS's capabilities to deliver a dark, oppressive atmosphere and fluid 3D visuals. What made it even more impressive was it wasn't just the product of a large studio, the game was really crafted by a small indie developer. Graphically, Dementium was a marvel of optimization. The game utilised dynamic lighting, smooth frame rates, and real-time shadows to create environments that felt eerie and immersive. Walking through the hospital corridors, players could see flickering lights, blood-stained walls, and creepy animations, all rendered in surprisingly crisp 3D. The game's story is deliberately vague at first, as you wake up in an abandoned nightmarish hospital with no memory of who you are or how you got there. As players explore the institution, they slowly uncover documents and disturbing clues that hint at experimentation, mental illness, and something far more sinister. The story is non-linear and relies heavily on environmental detail. Gameplay combined puzzle solving, exploration, and combat from a first-person perspective. The touchscreen was used for aiming and looking around, while the D-pad moved the character. This allowed for precision aiming, especially during the game's intense encounters with grotesque enemies. The visual design of the enemies was another standout element. From mutilated nurses to otherworldly beasts, each foe had a unique and terrifying look. Despite the DS's hardware constraints, the models were impressively detailed and animated fluidly. The use of atmospheric effects like fog and darkness elevated the tension. One particularly notable aspect was the sound design, which enhanced the visuals. Creeping through dark hallways, you'd hear distant screams, metallic echoes, and the static hum of broken lights. These audio cues paired with visuals created a horror experience that rivaled those on more powerful systems. Critics were stunned that such a game was possible on the DS. It was praised for its ambition, atmospheric presentation, and technical achievements. While some found the save system frustrating and the difficulty uneven, nearly everyone agreed it was a graphical showpiece. Dementium was also notable for being one of the few truly mature rated DS games, pushing the boundaries of what kind of stories and visual experience were possible on the handheld. It wasn't just trying to be creepy, it was trying to be cinematic, unsettling, and immersive. The game eventually received a sequel, Dementium 2, which built on the original's visual strength and redefined its gameplay. The series later saw remasters and ports on newer systems, but the DS originals still stand out as technical achievements. In the context of DS horror, Dementium: The Ward is unrivaled. It proved that even the humble DS could render a terrifying world full of suspense, detail, and dread, all in the palm of your hand. Blood of Bahamut. Released exclusively in Japan in 2009 by Square Enix, Blood of Bahamut is one of the most visually impressive and ambitious action RPGs ever created for the Nintendo DS. Inspired by the spectacle of massive boss battles, the game features towering enemies so enormous they span both of the DS's screens, delivering a sense of scale rarely seen on the handheld. Though it never received an official English localization, it remains a cult favourite for DS enthusiasts who admire its technical prowess. Visually, the game pushes the DS hardware with complex character sprites, detailed backgrounds, and incredibly multi-screen animations. The centrepiece of the game is the massive boss fights, colossal beasts inspired by classic summons from the Final Fantasy series, such as Ifrit, Shiva, and of course Bahamut himself. These bosses are beautifully rendered with intricate animations, glowing effects, and elemental flourishes that make each encounter a visual event. The game's story follows a group of warriors tasked with protecting a city built atop the back of a sleeping giant. When ancient colossi begin to awaken, threatening civilization itself, the team must take up arms to stop them. While the plot leans heavily on traditional JRPG tropes, the setting and visual storytelling elevate the experience. Gameplay is structured around real-time combat and exploration. Players control a customizable protagonist and up to 3 AI or co-op partners. Each mission revolves around defeating massive enemies, exploring their towering bodies, and attacking weak points across their limbs and torsos. It's a unique take on boss battles that transforms each enemy into a living level. The dual screen format isn't just for show, it's integral to the action. Bosses move between the top and bottom screens, and players must stay alert as limbs crash down or sweep across both displays. The effects of magic, particle explosions, and weapon strikes are dynamic and flashy, giving every battle a sense of impact. The game supports up to 4-player local co-op, which adds another layer of complexity and visual clutter. Despite all this happening at once, the DS handles the action admirably with minimal slowdown, a testament to developers' technical finesse. Blood of Bahamut also includes detailed environments during hub exploration and side missions. While the game's environments are smaller than those of traditional RPGs, they're filled with style, offering lush towns, shimmering caves, and dramatic sky vistas. The enemy and character designs feature expressive sprites that blend 2D and 3D techniques effectively. Despite its Japan-only release, the game built a strong fan base internationally thanks to fan translations and online videos. Critics and import reviewers often cited the game's graphics as its strongest feature. The enormous scale of its boss fights simply hadn't been done before on the DS. The game's legacy lies in its uniqueness. It's one of the few titles on the DS that dares to go so large in scope, both narratively and visually. Its influence can even be seen on later titles like Monster Hunter Stories and parts of Final Fantasy Explorers. To this day, Blood of Bahamut stands as a shining example of visual ambition. It's a lost gem of the DS library that pushed the console's graphical limits in a way that very few games dared to do. And finally, Metroid Prime Hunters. When Metroid Prime Hunters launched for the DS in 2006, it marked one of the most ambitious attempts to bring a first-person shooter experience to the handheld console. Developed by Nintendo Software Technology, this game was tasked with translating the atmosphere, exploration, and visuals of the Prime series into a far more limited hardware environment. Remarkably, it succeeded in ways that few believed possible. Leveraging the DS's 3D capabilities, it created expansive detailed environments with real-time lighting, dynamic effects, and fast-paced 60 frames per second gameplay that was almost unheard of the system. The story of Hunters expands the Metroid universe with a new narrative thread involving the mysterious Ultimate Power located in the Limbic Cluster. Players assume the role of Samus Aran, but must also contend with 6 rival bounty hunters, each with their own unique abilities and motivations. While the story was lighter than core Metroid entries, it still delivered world building through log entries and environmental storytelling, elements crucial to the franchise. Graphically, Metroid Prime was a marvel. The game pushed polygon counts to their limit and managed real-time rendering of enemy encounters and boss fights that filled the screen. The environments are rich in texture and detail, with unique atmospheric settings across various alien planets. The use of real-time shadows and fluid animation gave a distinctly console-like feel despite being on a handheld. The game also ran at consistent 60 frames per second, a feat that significantly elevated the feel of its action. Gameplay took a radical turn with the DS touchscreen. Players used the stylus for aiming and looking around, while using the D-pad or face button controlled movements. An unusual scheme at the time, but one that allowed precise mouse-like control. It was especially effective in multiplayer, where fast reflexes and pinpoint aim made a huge difference. The single-player campaign leaned heavily into exploration, scanning, and puzzle solving, staying true to the Metroid formula while accompanying shorter play sessions. One of the most significant aspects of Hunters was its emphasis on online multiplayer. Long before online FPS gaming was common on handhelds, Hunters offered Wi-Fi play with friends and strangers, including voice chat. The game featured robust multiplayer maps, multiple modes, and the ability to play as Samus or any of the 6 rival hunters, each with their own unique weapon. It was an early showcase of the DS' Wi-Fi potential and laid the groundwork for future online-enabled titles. Visually, the bounty hunters were all well designed, each sporting distinct silhouettes and animation sets. Whether it was the Flaming Trace or the Hulking Spire, these characters popped on the small screen thanks to the thoughtful use of the DS' limited rendering capabilities. Weapon effects, explosions, and particle effects were also added to the illusion of graphical sophistication well beyond what many expected from the hardware. Despite its innovations, Hunters received a mixed to positive reception. Critics praised the visuals, multiplayer component, and style to control, but some found the single-player campaign repetitive and lacking the depth of the mainline Prime titles. Still, it earned strong sales, especially in the West, and became a staple of the DS's early library. Over time, Hunters has developed a cult following. Fans of the Metroid series often debate its place in the timeline and impact on the franchise. While it didn't reach the narrative depth or the scale of Prime 1 to 3, its technical achievement and competitive focus gave it a unique identity. It also introduced characters and lore that remain part of the broader Metroid mythos. Ultimately, Metroid Prime Hunters stands out as a testament to the DS's graphical possibilities when developers truly pushed their system. from its slick frame rate to its intricate environments and multiplayer depth, it remains as one of the most technically impressive games on the platform, and a must-play for Metroid fans and handheld shooters enthusiasts alike. And that's it. 7 of what I think are graphically stunning games for the Nintendo DS. Do you agree with my list? If so, let me know. And I said at the beginning, if there are ones that you think need to be on here, put them in the comments below. And as always, if you do think I've deserved it after watching this, please hit that like and subscribe button. We want to try and make 6,000 subscribers. Until then, I'll see you again in 3 days for another video. My name's been Danny. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.